Hello everyone, my name is John Bussard. I'm an HPE Business Transformation Center engineer for Ingram Micro. I help support HPE servers, blade system storage, as well as Aruba networking technology solutions. In my videos, what I like to do is show you a slide from a popular PowerPoint and then demonstrate to you what that means within a management context. Today we're going to be looking at the Aruba User Experience Insight Sensor, or it's commonly abbreviated the UXI sensor. The UXI sensor acts like a user on your network and tests resources on an ongoing basis. So for example, a lot of times people have problems and they might come to you to get a resolution to those problems, but their explanation of them tends to be pretty generic, especially if they're in-a-minute problems. They'll say, the salesforce.com is down, or the internet stinks, or Wi-Fi is bad, or something like that. But what does that really mean inside your environment? In the case of the website being down, is the website actually down? Is your internet service provider down? Is the little magic black box that they give you to put in your data center, is that down, or is that faulted for some reason? Maybe somebody reconfigured the gateway, the DNS. I think my point here really is there's a large amount of things that are between the user and their application that they're trying to access. And you've got to troubleshoot all along the way to figure out what's going on. And if the troubleshooting is something that is on an intermittent problem, right, you're going to have a lot more difficult time kind of finding a resolution to that issue. And that's where the User Experience Insight Sensor kind of sits. It sits as a user on your network and tests resources on an ongoing basis. If you look to the left, there's a few pictures of some of these sensors. So you can certainly get these sensors. They can look like an access point. They certainly can be mounted as such within your environment. A lot of people will place them all over their infrastructure so they can monitor this on an ongoing basis. Some people just buy one, and when they have problems, they place it in certain areas and troubleshoot that certain area. This can test resources on the wireless network as well as the wired network, and it takes its data and it sends it up to the cloud. And that can be done in two different fashions. That can be done through your Ethernet connection. That can also be done through a cellular connection as well, a low data rate cellular connection. So that's another subscription that you could purchase as a part of this solution. So this is certainly subscription-based. It's certainly cloud-based. So I suppose with all that kind of being said, let's explore this management context. All right, here we are in the User Experience Insight Sensor dashboard. Again, this is up in the cloud up here. Now, this was a purchase that they had acquired from Cape Networks and brought it under the Aruba fold. So let me explain a little bit as to what we are looking at here. So one of the nice things I like about this dashboard is easy to use and look at. All right, green is good, obviously red is bad, and yellow is something you're probably going to want to look into. But smiley faces are good, right? So this is a friendly type of interface, and I suppose you could even look at this and understand kind of what's going on without me explaining it to you, but I'll give you a little explanation here. Right now we're looking at all groups, and here's my groups here. So the idea is you'd have a group of sensors, right? And again, you take sensors, put them into a group, and then you place them into this environment. I have a sensor, one sensor in our environment. It's a part of this group here. Now, as you see, we can highlight, we can get more information. If I click on this, you'll see that this context changed up here, and now I see the sensor down below. So if this group had multiple sensors, I would see that down here. We're in the dashboard icon. If I move over one, we're going to get a global view of where this sensor is, and I'll zoom out a little bit. I'm by Niagara Falls. But there's where this sensor is. If I had multiple sensors at different branch locations, they would show up on this map. So let's go back to the dashboard over here. So services over here, these are my internal networking services. So we can see things like Wi-Fi, Ethernet, DHCP, gateway, DNS, right? So I'm testing these on an ongoing basis. And then over here, I have internal as well as external services. So internal services are resources within my environment. So certainly I do a lot of demonstrations on one view. We have a web server, an SFTP server, as well as some VMware servers that I'm testing to make sure they're up and going. So I want to know if these go down. But I'm also testing external resources here. So these are resources that are maybe out in the cloud. So data services cloud console, that's certainly something I demonstrate all the time. But things like Facebook, I got some Google Docs here I'm testing. If you go down a little bit further, I'm testing Microsoft Online as well as Microsoft Teams. So some business applications. And then certainly what's important to us, YouTube, right? Once again, as you see, as I highlight everything, I get a little bit more information. We can see there's no ongoing issues in the last 24 hours that have been happening. Over here, if I click on this, it's a quick way to get help. Right? I can open up a conversation with support, or I can actually search for help down here. If I go up to the top, I can search within this context. I can get any alerts, and we'll go over into this section in a little bit. This is where we kind of set this up. But what I want to show you is here's filtering. So not all is as it seems right now. If I click on this, you can see I've filtered out this one wireless network. So I'm going to connect that back in. And we can see there is certainly something that's going on with my environment. It's happening with this sensor, and something's happening with my captive porthole. So it's quick and easy to see if something's going on, and I'm getting kind of the frowny face or the sad face as to what's going on. But I can dig into any of these things inside this environment. So if I wanted to dig into how my data services cloud console is running, I can get more information on that. If I want to dig into the sensor over here, I could certainly dig into that. And we can see the different wired and wireless networks that I'm testing across within this environment. And we can see even though this SSID, this Aruba Instant-On SSID that I demo from, is green right now, it has had issues in the past. And if we highlight here, we can see across the Wi-Fi I get a marking, as well as the status spot I get a marking. We could see down below a little bit more information. So if I select that, right, we can see what happened, and we can get some information about the bit rate and frame retries that are happening in that environment. Right, so good information. What I do like about this solution is from a high level, from the main dashboard, I can quickly see what's going on. But if I want to dig in and get more information, I could certainly do that. And to the point of that, I can even get a PCAP file. So a PCAP file is a file that you can bring into something like Wireshark, and you can really get into the nitty-gritty of what the packets are doing on your network. Right, but over here we can see our Wi-Fi. Scroll down a little bit, and we can see some information about my environment, the sensor that's doing the test. Network services, DHC response time, DNS lookup time. If I go down even further, I get a little bit more information about my Wi-Fi in my environment. Now we have a lot of SSIDs in our environment because we test a lot of solutions that are out there within the Business Transformation Center. But I can look at my signal quality, so I can go over 2.4 gigahertz. All right, I can go over to 5 gigahertz. Right, we could look at all the channels if we felt like it. All right, so this is a nice view on the environment, and we may not have even known that something was going on the Aruba Instant-On network. All right, so this is a wireless network. We could also look at a wired network over here. We get some of the same similar information. All right. Let's go back to the dashboard. So this is great. So how does this get set up within your environment? Well, that's done through over here. So under this context, I could certainly log out, request the feature, look at documentation, see what new solutions they've added into this environment. But we're going to spend our time looking at settings. So we're underneath the network section, and specifically we're underneath wireless. That's where it defaults. And these are different SSIDs I have within my environment. Now you can add SSIDs pretty easily. You just go up to Add Network. At the very least, you're going to select what SSID, and these are all the SSIDs that this solution sees. All right, if it's hidden or not, if it's an open network, passphrase, right, or enterprise. So if you're using something like ClearPass, there's certainly some settings you're going to need to put in here. But at the very least, if you like passphrase, you just have to put your passphrase and you can connect. That's all you need to do. There are some advanced settings as well. So I could certainly just do these tests on 2.4 gigahertz or on 5 gigahertz if I wanted to. Right? But there's a bunch of things that I can do in this environment. All right, so that'd be wireless networks. We could also look at wired networks. So I'm doing VLAN 80. This happens to be the access VLAN on my port, but I could trunk that if I felt like it, that port on the switch, and I could do some interesting things. So for example, if I wanted to add a network, I give it an alias. We could do ClearPass if we felt like it. I could look at advanced, and we could do things like, how about specify a VLAN? So again, I could have that trunk port, and I could test a bunch of different VLANs within the environment if I wanted to. All right, this is from the networks that we're going to be testing on. Now, what are we going to be testing with? Well, that's the sensors itself. So I go down here under locations. We'll see sensors that exist. It's easy to add a sensor. Here's my one sensor right here. If I want to add a sensor, just click the plus sign. We're going to do UXI sensor. Click proceed. And then I put in a serial number as well as a MAC address into this. And then I would add this in. I can add multiples if I wanted to. It's just a CSV file with this information. And we can bring that up into this environment and it would show as an unconfigured sensor. And then I could go through the process of configuring it. Now if we look at how this one's configured, I could click Edit here. And we can see the different networks that I'm testing. Look at Advanced real quick. All right, let's go down to groups. So the idea is we take these sensors and we put them into groups. So if we have a site, we have multiple sensors at a site, we'd probably want to put those at a group. And we could manage that over here. And again, we can see where my sensor is. All right, so that's the networks we're testing on, what we're testing with. Now, what are we going to test? What resources are we going to test in our environment? That's done through Services and Apps Test. And this would be the same listing that we'd see on internal services on the main dashboard, as well as external services. And we can tell whether they're off or on over here. So if I want to turn off a test, I'll just switch the switch. All right. If I want to edit a test, we can just edit it. All right. So how do I add new tests into this environment? What I do is I click Add Test over here. And in this case, I've got external, predefined, and there's a variety of predefined external resources that are out on the web. I could also do custom. I got some templates that we could utilize. At the very least, we could do a generic test. We could put an IP address, a DNS name, a website, right? And then we could ping it, and then maybe check ports if we wanted to. Right, so that's a good way to kind of do that. So that'd be external. Same concepts for internal. If we look at predefined, there's not much in there, but I think this is probably a good place to stop and say that this isn't an Aruba only solution. You can use this with really any vendors, wireless as well as wired equipment in your environment, with any resources that are internal or external environment. Like I said, at the very least, you could check ports and a ping inside that environment to see if it's up and running. All right. We could also do custom configurations to be able to do that. So again, I got some different templates here, but again, I have this generic where I could do the DNS name, the IP address, and the ping. All right. All right, so that's how these get installed, whether they're internal or external services. Now you can see that some of these are kind of in the middle here, and some of these are clearly on. So what is this in the middle? Well, I have a choice of what I want to test on what networks. And that's done over here. It's change selection. So I could choose what sensors I'm testing on or what groups I'm testing on, and then what networks I'm testing on. So for example, if I turn off all wireless networks and I scroll down, you'll see that on the wired networks, I'm testing pretty much everything. Everything is listed as on the sliders all the way over. Now, if I reverse this and I do, instead of all wired networks, I do all wireless networks. So I'm just testing the wireless networks. And these are the tests that are run on the wireless networks. Now, I'm not doing the internal resources on the wireless networks. I'm just doing the external resources. But I could certainly change that if I wanted to. If I want to change that, I would just turn, it on. All right, so that's kind of how that's setting. Again, I could change it based on groups, on sensors, and on the wireless networks themselves. All right, so that's what I'm testing. All right, what external and internal resources I'm testing, what I'm testing it with, and the networks I'm testing it on. I go down a little further. We've got thresholds. When does the red come up, the error come up? When does the warning come up, and when is it green, for example? And that's done through here. So you can see I've got Wi-Fi settings over here, but I also have network settings and internal settings, right, for the internal resources and the external resources down here. I'm going to go back up to the top. Once again, we can see these sliders where I can turn these tests on or off. And we'll go all the way back up to the top. We'll look at Wi-Fi real quick. So these are all the tests, but if I wanted to look at tests maybe just related to bit rate, I could do that. If I wanted to edit these tests, maybe this range wasn't very good, I could click over here and change that if I felt like it. All right, if I wanted to revert it, I would click this. All right, so I have the ability to change when these alerts go off in our environment. All right, now how do I get notified of any alerts that are happening? Well, that would be under notifications, so I'm going to select that. You can see, how I'm receiving alerts. All right, so this user down here, which I've added through team, way down here, you'll set regular hours for this person. Right? And then during regular hours, they'll get these alerts. And then after hours, they'll get these alerts in the environment. So you have the ability to turn those on and off as well. Obviously, we do testing from time to time with our network. We might want to put a mute on. You could certainly do that. Select the resource. So for example, maybe I wanted to do the sensor. I would then just select when I want this sensor to be muted. All right, so those are notifications. I go down a little further. There are reports that are in this environment. You can see I have one report generated on demand up here. I have another report that's scheduled to run every week. You can take a look at this report, see when it's run, what groups, what networks I am running this report against, what time zones. Click cancel. We could create an on-demand report if we wanted to. So let's do that. Let's create a new report. We'll call this YouTube. And we'll select all our groups. And then what networks do we want to test? Well, we will test. Why don't we turn off this guest network, maybe the student network. We'll leave everything else in place. All right. And then we got to select the times. So we'll do the last 30 days. And then we'll click submit. Let's take a little bit to generate, but not too long. All right, now it's generated. We can download this. I'll click save. And once it's come down, I will open this up. We can take a look at this report. All right, so we got kind of an index of what the report contains. We get an overview of my network. All right. How many times was green, warning, as well as red. You can see those times as well as what the issues were, what were my top issues, and when they happened. Right here's that instant on network. We could see 6% of the time I had warnings. A lot of times it was off. I turned this SSID off on the weekends. But again, we could take a look and we can see the issue density down here. Here's my Aruba staff network. So it's another wireless network. So this network works pretty well, as well as my VLAN 80. Again, this is another one. So this is a great way to get a report and understand what's going on your network. And be able to identify any issues that are happening. All right, here's the splash page for the User Experience Insight Sensor over here. If you're interested at looking at it, this is where I log into the dashboard for this. Now, the last thing I want to show you on this interface is really the integrations down here. All right, so certainly there's webhooks, there's certainly there's data push to destinations, but more importantly, Aruba Central. So Aruba Central is a way of cloud managing Aruba networking equipment like access points as well as switches and gateways. So this information could be fed up into Aruba Central in order to be able to have the kind of that one-stop view into your entire environment. So that is the User Experience Insight Sensor. I hope you found this video informative, and please stay tuned for more videos.